Hey, what's up, you guys? This is 100 Words for Murder, a criminology podcast hosted by yours truly, Jessie Dalheim.
And me, Olivia Roman. This podcast got sparked from our interest and my interest in forensic science, which I do take here at Viera High School with Mr. Bird. It's an amazing class. We go into depth on, like what we're going to do here into cases and the forensics in them, including DNA, blood, all like the evidence in a case, and also, which we're learning right now, psychology and the difference in the brains of serial killers and us. It's a very educational class and very interesting. I do recommend it to those of you who might have a free space next semester or next year.
So I don't actually take a forensics course at VHS, but instead I'm just simply enthralled by all the murder mysteries that are out there in society. Also, Olivia and I listened to the podcast called My Favorite Murder by Karen Kilsgariff and Georgia Hardstark. She got me into it, and now it's kind of a bad addiction, I'd say.
It's such a good podcast. We call ourselves the Murderinos now, which is what they call their fans, but amazing. I do recommend you guys going to listen to it if you want more in depth on crimes than what we're going to be doing here.
We're both in our school's television broadcasting program called VTV, and we think this podcast will draw in the attention of students around our school and be especially intriguing for those who have a knack for criminology like us.
Yes. And with our VTV program, we're in editorial leadership. I am the senior arts and entertainment producer.
And I'm the senior news producer. Yeah, so today Olivia is going to be telling us the case of Carl Tanzler and the Corpse Bride, which is actually, like I mentioned earlier, from My Favorite Murder, episode 186, Sprankers. We did a little podcast of our own about it, but theirs is a lot more in depth, so if you guys like this one, make sure to go and check theirs out too.
Since we do live in Florida, This case actually takes place in Zephyr Hills, Florida, which is only about 2 hours from here, but that's, with good traffic.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you want to take the stage?
Yeah, let's begin. So, our story here starts on July 31st, 1909, which marks the birth date of Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, the daughter of a Key West cigar maker named Francisco Pancho Hoyos, and his wife named Aurora. Maria Elena had a bit of a tragic life. Her sister had died from tuberculosis, and her brother-in-law was electrocuted on a construction site.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Soon after she was married, she miscarried, and a child and her husband had abandoned her and moved to Miami. To make matters worse, Maria Elena also contracted tuberculosis, most likely from her sister. Here's Jessie, our dictionary, letting you know what tuberculosis is, for those of you who don't know.
Hey guys, so tuberculosis, I looked it up on Google. It's also called TB. It's a disease caused by the bacteria called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The bacteria usually attacks the lungs, but they can also damage other parts of the body. TB spreads through the air when a person with TB of the lungs or throat coughs, sneezes, or talks.
Which is why it would be
easily contracted between their family.
Yeah. As Jessie said, it's a typically fatal disease at the time. She sought treatment at the United States Marine Hospital in Key West, and that's when her story takes a very strange turn. While at the hospital, she met a German-born radiologic technologist named Carl Tanzler. That was kind of a mouthful. Or, as he liked to refer to himself, as Karl von Kassel.
It's like the vampire. I will suck your blood.
Tanzler actually had many names. He was born Carl Tanzler, or George Carl Tanzler, on February 8th, 1877, in Dresden, Germany. Little is known about his true background because his invented one was really confusing and changed often. He grew up in Germany but claimed to have traveled to India and Australia, where he did electrical work, bought boats, purchased a South Seas island, and began building a trans-ocean flying plane around the time of World War I. And when the war broke out, he alleged that he was jailed by British authorities for safekeeping and was released at war's end. We do know that he immigrated to the United States in 1926 via Cuba. From Cuba, he settled in Zephyr Hills, Florida, where his sister lived. In 1927, he took a job at the U.S. Marine Hospital using the name Karl von Kassel.
Oh boy.
It was at the hospital that he met Elena Hoyos and immediately fell in love with her. He later claimed that, as a child, he was visited by visions of a dead ancestor, Countess Anna Constantia von Kassel, who revealed to him the face of his true love, an exotic dark-haired woman.
Oh, that's exotic. That's a new word.
Exotic.
Reminds me of like a safari.
He was convinced the visions had been Elena. Tanzler, with his self-professed medical knowledge, attempted to treat and cure her with a variety of medicines, as well as X-ray and electrical equipment that were brought to Maria's home.
So I'm guessing that like during this time that there weren't a lot of like medical advancements in technology, so like things were a little on the DL, down low. Is that right, Olivia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Being that they would do anything to get their daughter help. So him coming to their home with all these, medical devices, they were probably like, okay, great, this man's basically an angel to us.
Mm-hmm.
But little did they know what was in store.
Mm.
He had showered her with gifts of jewelry and clothing and professed his love to her. There is nothing to say that Elena ever reciprocated his affection, but it is likely that she was baffled by the attention being given to her by the strange little man.
Oh. Ugh.
Despite Tanzler's best efforts, Elena died from tuberculosis at her parents' home on October 25th, 1931. And that makes her she was born in 1909, so 20-something.
Yeah, so I think that's around 20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Tanzler paid for her funeral, and with the permission of her family, he then commissioned the construction of an above-ground mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery, which he visited almost every night.
A mausoleum, I didn't know what that was at first, so I looked it up. A building, especially a large and stately one, housing a tomb or tombs. So a dead person, essentially.
Yes, it kind of looks like a fancy shed.
Fancy.
Fancy.
Fancy
for
schmancy.
dead people.
Of course.
No one knows what finally pushed Tanzler over the edge, but it's believed that he heard Elena calling to him from her grave, asking him to free her from her stone prison. Oof.
Mm-mm.
He later stated that Elena's spirit appeared to him when he sat next to her tomb and serenaded her with her favorite song.
Oh.
What could that possibly be? But, I don't think much is known about Tanzler's mental state, but it could possibly be that he might have had schizophrenia, because usually that's when, you see things, you're kind of going, crazy.
Hallucinations? Did you get that in forensics?
Yeah,
there we go.
Like I said, we're learning about psychology, and that is one of the things that had been talked about. There was also a phone in the mausoleum, and people saw this and just thought about how romantic it looked, but little did they know what was going on.
He was making phone calls to her?
Yeah, well, I have no idea how it worked. Like, if he just called and it
went straight to voicemail.
If he was hearing her voice, so maybe he thought she was answering. Yeah, weird.
I mean, like, maybe the time period, they just I don't know, things could be things change over time, so maybe
it's
some
nasty.
people viewed it as oh, that's so romantic and such a gentleman to talk to his wife even though she's passed. And
It wasn't his wife.
But it wasn't his wife, though. Okay.
I mean, they might not have known. We're also reading Frankenstein right now, and in the book, because a lot of things were oh, that doesn't sound right at all, because the Victor Frankenstein, not Frankenstein, but the doctor, he had not really a sister, but some girl who lived in his house that they didn't adopt but took in, and the mom's oh, I want y'all to get married after I'm dead, and we're just kind of ew, why? He's kind of your sister, kind of not.
Who would have? I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Get a little literature in there, too.
Yeah, of course.
One night in April 1933, Tanzler crept into the cemetery and removed Elena's body from the mausoleum, carting it out of the graveyard in a toy wagon.
I had a Red Ryder when I was younger, and I'm just imagining.
Me, too. Oh, my gosh. He took her home with him in the wagon, and that's when things got even stranger.
What? How did people not know this?
I have no idea. I just don't know.
There has to be,
those wagons weren't that big, so how did he get her body in there, first of all?
And also, there has to be, that one late-night 3 a.m. jogger.
Tanzler wired Elena's bones together with wire and coat hangers and fitted her face with glass eyes. As her skin began to decompose, he replaced it with silk cloth that had been soaked in wax and plaster. Keep in mind, Tanzler was previously, or still at the time, was a doctor and knew what chemicals would be best for preservation of her body. When her hair fell out, he fashioned a wig from her hair that had been given to him by Elena's mother soon after her funeral in 1931. Tanzler also used copious amounts of perfume, disinfectants, and preserving agents to mask the odor and slow the decomposition of the body. He had to do so because he kept Elena's body in his bed.
No.
Yeah.
Ew, 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 ew.
It's also said that there might have been like a divider of some sorts between them two in the bed so that she could have her privacy.
Oh, privacy my butt.
In October 1940, Elena's sister, Florinda, heard rumors of Tanzler sleeping with the disinterred body of her sister and confronted Tanzler at his home, where Elena's body was discovered. Tanzler was arrested and detained, finally, for desecrating Elena's tomb. Stealing her corpse was not legal at the time. Who would have known? Is it illegal now?
I hope so.
Tanzler was examined by psychiatrists, but they found him mentally competent to stand trial. And after a preliminary hearing, though, the charges had to be dismissed. The statute of limitations for the crime had expired. So the statute of limitations, at least here in Florida, well, I guess anywhere, is when a crime is committed, you know, a few years back, and finally once the person gets arrested, they cannot be tried because it happened so long ago. And he had her corpse for several years.
Oh, Maria de Hijos.
Yes.
Okay.
The case drew much attention from South Florida newspapers, and it created a sensation among the public, both regionally and across the country. Believe it or not, the public mood toward Tanzler was generally sympathetic.
Oh.
Yeah. Oof. Many viewed the eccentric German as romantic.
Oh,
Yeah, tell
of
I'm
course.
doing air quotes, because nasty.
Yeah.
There was no conclusive evidence at the time that Carl had sexual relations with Elena's corpse, but later examinations suggested that it was possible. Sadly, we cannot go into that. During the furor of the story, Elena's body was examined by a pathologist and then put on public display at the Dean Lopez Funeral Home in Key West, where it was seen by nearly 7,000 people.
Oh my gosh, that happened? That seriously happened? Why? Who?
I don't know. I feel like she's gone through enough already.
Yeah. What? Oh my gosh.
Her corpse was eventually returned to the Key West Cemetery and was reburied in an unmarked grave in a secret location to prevent any further tampering. In the aftermath of the discovery, Tanzler left Key West, but he didn't do so in shame.
Of course not. Of course not, after all he's done.
Yeah. He returned to Zephyr Hills, Florida, and wrote an autobiography that appeared in the pulp magazine Fantastic Adventures in 1947. He became a U.S. citizen in Tampa in 1950. Why? Why?
I don't know why.
Florida. Come on,
Florida, come on, Florida.
Florida.
Thumbs down, Florida.
Gator wrestling, and now we got some corpse stealing, man. He never got over his obsession with Elena Hoyos and longed for his lost love. He missed her so much he created a death mask of her as the basis for a life-size dummy,
Oh my gosh.
which he kept in his bed until his death on July 3rd, 1952. Some accounts of Tanzler's death claim his body was actually found in the arms of the dummy, but this is merely wishful thinking by those of morbid sensibilities.
At us.
Yes. According to his obituary, he died on the floor of his home. It was noted, though, that overlooking his corpse was a waxen image wrapped in silken cloth and a robe. And it seems that his replacement, Elena, was with him to the very end. There was more speculation of, I guess, we go again, morbid sensibilities, those people that think that he had actually found Maria's corpse again.
No,
And
not again.
that was who he had, died with. But,
Oh my
that's only
gosh.
speculation. And as we have been told that it is likely the waxen
Yeah.
dummy person.
Is that it?
That's the story of Carl Tanzler and the Corpse Bride.
That was so good, Roman.
So I got most of my info from American Hauntings Inc. and also from, the podcast we've already been talking about, in the beginning.
Promise
My
it's
Favorite
not
Murder,
sponsored.
which episode 186, Sprankers.
Yep.
Amazing podcast again. Go listen to it and sign up for forensics. But yes, that is it. That is the case.
That was so good. I'm so proud of you. Look at you.
Thank you. It was rough.
That is, yeah.
It's so interesting reading it, but then it's
another
also
thing to
like
picture it.
yeah. And sometimes like if you get into it too much, you feel like you're like kind of living in it, and it's so crazy because Maria's basically like maybe 3-4 years like away from my age. I'm 18, and just I don't know. Carl was like about 50 meeting her.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are some ladies who like older men. And we just really hope that that wasn't Elena's business. Because how are we to know that she actually loved him and then he took her? Because if that were the case, I guess it would be different, but you still shouldn't sleep with a dead body.
Yeah, that's no excuse for love.
Here's the takeaway from the story. Just don't
sleep with dead bodies.
Just don't bury... Or what?
Don't dig up buried bodies.
Don't dig up dead people and bring them to your home.
If there's one thing that you guys learned from our podcast today, it's don't sleep with dead bodies and don't bury them up either beforehand.
Just stay away from the cemetery.
No, get a dog. Sleep with the dog.
And when you go to bury a dog, don't dig it back up.
So that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes, thank you. Listening. They're not really watching.
Oh, yeah.
It's a podcast.
Yeah, you'll see our graphic, but that's it. But no, if you guys see us at school, come up and say hey.
You will never know what we look like, just our names, because this is a podcast.
No, just...
You'll hear our voices and you'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, if anyone really is listening.
I mean, or you can just go to Vera High, the website.
If you go onto VTV, you'll find us too.
Yeah.
Please don't
Stalk
wait
us.
till we're dead and then bury up our...
Don't stalk us. Anywho, stay tuned for our next episode.
Yes.
And thank you guys so much for listening again.
Yes, please stay with us. It'll get better, I promise.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But yep, thank you for listening.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.